Good evening to those bored enough to watch. Since I first played it, Yakuza 0 has become one of my favorite games that I've played for various reasons, including the story and the gameplay. In this video, I want to discuss both of those things and the things that I liked about them before concluding with why I would recommend this game to you. So, with that said, let's discuss Yakuza 0. The game opens in Kamurocho, where a 20-year-old Kiryu is seen in what will eventually be known as the Empty Lot, shaking someone down for money on behalf of a loan shark they owe money to. He then takes money from their wallet and leaves them unconscious before meeting with the loan shark, who tries to convince Kiryu to work for him instead of the Dojima family. He refuses and watches as the loan shark drives away. Hence, Kiryu does the same to meet with someone else. Yakuza 0 takes place during the bubble era of Japan, a time in which real estate and stock market prices were severely inflated. However, interest rates still remained low, which led to people taking out loans to make investments in those fields. This economic bubble would later pop in the early 90s, but this is mostly irrelevant to Yakuza 0, which takes place in December of 1988. With this in mind, a lot of characters in the game often talk about money and what it's really worth, as a lot of them enjoy a lavish lifestyle and believe wholeheartedly that if they spend correctly, they can buy their way out of any situation. Yakuza games aren't strangers to adapting aspects from the real world into their stories, which can be seen from adapting modern technologies into its stories or linking them to real-world time periods and locations, and this game is no different. I think that the way this game incorporates the time period into its gameplay and story allows you to better immerse yourself into the time period, and an example of this is that later in the game you unlock ways to make billions of yen if you know how to properly grind for it. In addition, I think that the game furthers one of the key themes that is prominent throughout the series as a whole, which is the theme of how times change and the various ways that people adapt to it. Kiryu may be able to obtain some form of infinite wealth in this game, to the point where you're encouraged to throw money on the floor in order to avoid encounters with enemies. However, obtaining that money isn't as simple in later entries, because as the series progresses into different time periods, so does the state of the world. Retrospectively speaking, these games always make it a point to show what kind of people exist in the changing times, whether it be the newer generations and presenting how they may adapt differently to the world and rise to the top compared to someone like Kiryu, or showing how older, pre-existing characters could adapt to the ever-changing world. This has been a theme throughout the series, and I think that Yakuza 0 does a good job of presenting that through its setting and the way the gameplay mechanics are centered around it. Kiryu arrives at the place he was supposed to meet Akira Nishikiyama at, although he's nowhere to be found, and Kiryu decides to wander the area in search of him and overhears a civilian being shaken down nearby. He intervenes, and this is where we're introduced to the game's combat. After beating them all, Nishikiyama arrives and the two leave. This part of the game is where we're introduced to the skill wheel in the game, which requires you to spend money to unlock perks such as new moves, more health, the ability to deal more damage, or other aspects in combat that could give you a better advantage. The skill wheels have locks, and to remove them, you'll need to invest time into grinding, which will be introduced to the player in due course. Kiryu and Nishikiyama had a dynamic in the first game that we never got to see much of due to the latter character being that game's main villain. Hence, we never got to see much of their relationship aside from the beginning of Yakuza 1. This game aims to rectify that by placing more of a focus on their dynamic, which I think is a good way to show how close the two of them are. In addition, the story and its events also further the bond that they have. Even the way the two speak with each other show how well they know one another. Nishikiyama is the one who stays on top of all of the trends in the changing times, such as the fashion trends and finding the best places to frequent in the area. On the other hand, Kiryu, much like how he is throughout the series, is set in his ways and isn't interested in staying up to date in the latest trends like his oath brother is. Once more, the game does a good job at establishing this part of his character and highlighting it by pairing him with someone like Nishikiyama. The two of them spend their night doing various things, but ultimately they find themselves at a restaurant. They overhear the news broadcast documenting the dead body of a man found in the empty lot. This is also the same person Kiryu was shaking down at the beginning of the game, and he clarifies that he didn't actually kill the man. He merely beat him unconscious and took his money. This indicates that he was framed. Before he can dwell on it, the Dojima family lieutenants call upon him to meet them at the Dojima family headquarters. Kiryu and Nishiki deduce that they're going to use this incident against Kazuma to drive him out of the Dojima family. So Kiryu goes to the Dojima family in an attempt to plead his case, while Nishiki goes to seek advice from Kashiwagi, since Kazuma himself is unavailable due to being in prison throughout the game. Upon reaching the headquarters, he meets the three lieutenants, Kuze, Awano, and Shibusawa. Just from the way they sit on their chairs, the game shows what kind of people they are. Kuze is someone who is confrontational, prideful, and is typically the first person to charge into any situation. Awano is mostly unserious, who focuses most of his days to living a lavish lifestyle with the money he's attained rather than honoring his title as a Yakuza. Shibusawa is more formal and thorough, typically the one to stand behind the others and watch from the shadows, only acting when the opportunity presents itself, and is more of a tactician rather than the kind of person to try and involve themselves in a situation head first and attempt to charge ahead of those around him, akin to how the other lieutenants would. It appears that the loan shark Kiryu was working on behalf of set him up for trouble with the Dojima family by lying to the lieutenants, as he was told that it was Kiryu's idea to perform the confrontation in the empty lot. Kiryu tries to plead his case that it was the loan shark who asked him to meet with the man in the empty lot, beat the money out of him, and leave, although the lieutenants don't appear to believe him and reveal that the man had been shot, which is what killed him. Kiryu tries to argue against this as he didn't have a gun and hence couldn't have killed the man. Regardless, his attempts to tell his side of the story fall on deaf ears, and the lieutenants remain firm on their stance of not only Kiryu needing to be the one who is held accountable for this situation, but Kazama needing to be held responsible too, since he was the one who brought Kiryu into the Dojima family. Kuze asks for a brief time alone with him and mentions that Sohei Dojima, the patriarch of the Dojima family, wants the empty lot, which is why it's problematic for it to become a murder scene, as the police directing their attention to the lot makes it difficult for the lieutenants to make attempts to obtain it. The meeting ends with Kuze demanding that Kiryu turns himself into the police and leaves his pinky finger behind as a sign of accountability to the Yakuza when he does so. Throughout the game, you unlock different styles for the combat. During this section, Bacchus, the same man who introduced the skill wheel, also acts as an avenue for Kiryu to unlock 2 more styles for the combat. I'll discuss the combat in due course, so for now, Bacchus coincidentally leads Kiryu to the people who work for the loan shark Kiryu worked on behalf of. Hence, Kiryu gains information on where to find their boss. He reaches their office and briefly fights through his grunts before reaching the man himself. He begins to talk and mentions that someone told him to instruct Kiryu to collect money in the empty lot. Before he mentions who it is though, Kuze intervenes and asks for another private moment with Kiryu. During this, Kuze tries to recruit Kiryu to spy on Kazama. Kiryu refuses and later meets with Nishikiyama and Kashiwagi in the Kazama family office. Here, Kashiwagi tells Kiryu and Nishikiyama about the Kamurocho redevelopment project being led by Sohei Dojima, who'd been using his lieutenants to gather ownership of every single piece of land within the area so that it can generate a large profit for Dojima, hence resulting in him being able to become a key earner and figure within the Tojo clan and eventually the next chairman of the clan due to the project. However, the owner of the empty lot is presumed missing, but once they're found, Dojima plans to buy the land for 1 billion yen. Ultimately, focus is placed on Kazama and how the Dojima family lieutenants intend to use the ordeal with Kiryu to force him out of the family. Kiryu ultimately plans to storm the family headquarters and leave altogether, then force Kuze to reveal the real killer behind the incident within the empty lot, as they assume that he is the one who framed Kiryu for the murder. Nishikiyama and Kashiwagi try to talk him down, but ultimately Kiryu insists on proceeding regardless. This game has a lot of moments containing dramatic irony, and one of them is shown here. Kiryu mentions that even if Kazama were to tell him not to proceed with his plan, he'd still go and do it regardless. In the moment, this is assumed to be something that Kiryu is saying in the heat of the moment, but from our own hindsight, we know from the first Yakuza game that Kiryu would go regardless of Kazama's wishes. Kiryu and Nishikiyama begin journeying to the Dojima family headquarters. During the ride, Kiryu reminisces on the days leading up to him becoming a Yakuza. He entered that life in hopes of following Kazama's footsteps despite the fact that Kazama himself didn't want Kiryu joining. Regardless, Kiryu made a heartfelt speech, and the next day, he and Nishikiyama were Yakuza. Upon reaching the headquarters, Kiryu enters alone and tries to speak with Dojima regarding the termination of his oath to the family. Kuze stands in his path and by mistake ends up declaring that Kiryu is no longer a part of the family. Kuze begins to leave, and to reach him to get information on the identity of the true killer, Kiryu is tasked with fighting the Dojima family men to reach him, hence beginning a long fight. Kiryu tries to get more information about the killer's identity but is instead met with a fight. Hence, a boss fight with Kuze is initiated. After defeating him, Dojima, Shibusao, and Awana walk into the room, and for his impulsive decision to let Kiryu out of the family without consulting anyone, Kuze is forced to take accountability with his own pinky finger. Dojima honors Kuze's decision and declares that Kiryu is no longer a part of the family, of which Kiryu tries to plead his case that Kazama had nothing to do with the incident. This ultimately falls on deaf ears, and Kazama is still to be targeted for the incident. Back in Kamurocho, Kiryu is left feeling defeated, and it's here that a man named Tachibana introduces himself. Tachibana offers Kiryu a place in his real estate business, as he wants to obtain ownership of the empty lot so that he can protect Kazama from being expelled and also work towards proving Kiryu's innocence in the empty lot incident. Kiryu rejects the offer out of initial distrust for Tachibana, but reluctantly accepts his business card and leaves. He meets Nishikiyama at the Kazama family office, and the two agree to meet back at Kiryu's apartment. During his journey home, Kiryu meets Mr. Shakedown for the first time, who, as his name suggests, tries to shake Kiryu down for money. Mr. Shakedown will be an essential part of grinding for money in this game. This initial fight with him is supposed to see you lose against him, but if you're skilled enough then you can beat him and avoid having your money taken. In his apartment, Kiryu meets with Nishikiyama and they discuss recent events. Namely, the owner of the loan shark that set Kiryu up has been found dead, which means that Kiryu won't be able to definitively find out more about who framed him. Nishikiyama also gives more information about Tachibana real estate, and mentions that they've recently been buying out a multitude of different properties within Kamurocho by any means necessary, even going against the likes of the Tojo clan in order to do so. Nishikiyama offers to help Kiryu find more information on them the next day, but Kiryu refuses and mentions that he'll do it alone as to avoid getting his oath brother into trouble for being associated with him. This will be a recurring theme throughout the game. As Kiryu makes more of an enemy with the Dojima family, he'll also reject help from those around him and generally feel as though he's imposing or making trouble for others when they want to offer their help. It's a very significant part of the game that's established in the second chapter and reinforced as the game proceeds. During his investigation into Tachibana real estate, Kiryu is given the location of a building that Tachibana is buying out and goes there to see if he can find them. He meets the owner of a bar who's still yet to be bought out by Tachibana real estate, and it's here that he learns more about their tactics, such as employing homeless people to cause a disturbance to the business as well as calling their phone throughout the day and night. During their conversation, Oda from Tachibana real estate enters the bar and gives a large sum of money to the owner in exchange for his departure from the building. It's revealed that the owner had been continually rejecting their offer so that he can try and bait them into giving him the largest sum of money possible. Kiryu leaves to find the homeless men who are doing jobs for Tachibana, and after running errands for them, they reveal what the best place to find Tachibana real estate is. Upon going to the Champion District, he encounters Oda once more and tells him that Tachibana wanted Kiryu to join the real estate firm. Upon confirming this, Kiryu is given a location to a place where he'll meet Tachibana once more, although upon his arrival he only finds a fight with Tachibana real estate's men and Oda awaiting him, hence initiating a long fight and a subsequent boss fight. After defeating him, Tachibana arrives and mentions that Kazuma is the reason that he approached Kiryu, and that he foresaw the recent events in the game. It's also revealed that Tachibana is able to locate the owner of the empty lot, and after giving Kiryu proof that Kazuma did approach him to unite the two together, Kiryu joins Tachibana real estate. Previous Yakuza games that feature multiple protagonists generally split their stories into parts, which normally see you playing through 4 chapters as a specific protagonist. Yakuza 0 features 2 protagonists, and unlike previous Yakuza games, it continually switches perspectives throughout the game every 2 chapters. Chapter 1 and 2 are seen through Kiryu's perspective in Kamurocho. Chapter 3 and subsequently 4 are through the perspective of Goro Majima in Sotenbori. This game takes place 3 years after the assassination attempt that he and Saejima were planning against the Ueno Saiwa clan in Yakuza 4. While Saejima was sent to prison, Majima was punished by being tortured and kept as prisoner in Sotenbori, where Shimano enlisted his oath brother, a man named Sagawa, to keep watch over him as the manager of the Cabaret Grand. Right from the moment we're introduced to Majima, we're immediately able to discern that he isn't himself. The previous games have highlighted his unpredictable nature, but this game sees him acting formal and calculated, as though he were on a leash. This game aims to give the story of how Kiryu and Majima became the people we see them as in future entries within this series, and this game does a really good job at highlighting that by introducing them via depicting them acting in a way that we're unfamiliar with. It highlights that this is a rendition of these characters that we're not acquainted with, and it ultimately aims to slowly develop their ideals and characteristics that we're familiar with as the game proceeds. After Majima stops an ongoing disturbance in the club, he briefly steps outside for a break where we see that he's being watched everywhere he goes by Sagawa's men. Back inside the club, he meets with Sagawa himself. In order to get back into the Yakuza, Majima has been tasked with attaining a large sum of money as profit from the Grand in exchange for Sagawa having a discussion with Shimano to let him back into the family. Majima has been working towards this goal, but it appears that Sagawa is only using his discussion with Shimano to lead Majima on, as every time he gets close to making the desired amount, Sagawa just gives him another milestone to reach. In addition, Sagawa also tampers with the business operations by taking the Cabaret Grand's best earner from them. Hence, Majima is tasked with going to Club Odyssey, a rival, and poaching their best earner. During this outing, we're introduced to Majima's combat via Kameki, who acts as Majima's avenue for introducing his combat styles. Other than that, he makes a deal with the manager of Club Odyssey. After securing their top earner into his own team at the Cabaret Grand, he decides to go home for the night. Upon reaching home, he sees more of Sagawa's men watching the apartment he's staying in. In his sleep, Majima has a nightmare that serves as a flashback to the assassination attempt of the Ueno Saiwa clan he and Saejima were planning and the events that occurred afterwards. Majima was tortured with no knowledge as to what happened with Saejima and whether he's alive or dead. The next morning he goes to work, and later that evening he's told by Sagawa to leave and meet him elsewhere. Regardless of Majima's protest, he goes to the planned meeting place. There, Sagawa gives Majima the task of killing someone named Makoto Makimura. In exchange, he'll guarantee a discussion with Shimano regarding Majima rejoining the Yakuza. Majima decides to go home for the night and begin looking for Makoto the next day. Hence, he goes to a telephone club the next morning and arranges to meet a girl who knows Makoto. Upon meeting her, Majima entertains the girl's antics by buying her food, winning prizes at an arcade among a plethora of other things. Here, he learns that Makoto Makimura is nothing like what Sagawa described, and that they're searching for a man with a tattoo depicting a bat. Ultimately, they end the night with the girl giving Majima the location of a massage parlor that Makoto owns. Upon reaching the parlor, Majima finds that it's empty, and just as he's about to leave, a blind woman who is an employee employee enters. Majima tries to leave but she bumps into him, hence finding out that he's there. Initially thinking that he's a thief, Majima lets her work on him to convince her that he isn't. During the massage, Majima finds out more information on the man that he thought he'd been sent to kill and once more cements the notion that he isn't the person that Sagawa described, as Makoto had apparently saved the blind woman. Majima falls asleep and is awoken. The man assumed to be Makoto enters the building and deduces what Majima had been sent there to do. Hence, he sends the blind woman out on an errand, and with there being no one in the building but himself and Majima, a boss fight is initiated. After the fight, a group of Yakuza walk into the building, and it's revealed that the man Majima had been fighting is named Wenhai Lee, and Makoto Makimura is the blind woman who had been sent out. Coincidentally, she walks in and is taken by the men, who shoot Lee and temporarily incapacitate him. This leaves Majima to fight them on his own and pursue Makoto himself. After finding and taking down the men currently holding her, he finds himself protecting the life he was ordered to kill. This brief section of the game sees you needing to lead Makoto as Majima through the town that is now littered with the Yakuza currently searching for her. In order to hide from them, you can blend into the different crowds scattered throughout the area. If you're caught, then you'll need to fight to defend Makoto. Specifically during these brief sections of the game, defending Makoto should be your priority as the men will try to grab her. If they do so, she'll use her energy to try and resist, and if she uses all of her energy, they'll take her and you'll fail, needing to restart as a result. I think that this is a good way of connecting an event in the story with the gameplay, and initially, this section of the game can be rather difficult, but the best technique that I found was to use the breaker style and attack within close proximity to Makoto, hence fending off anyone who tries to grab her. After fighting off the last of the Yakuza pursuing Makoto for the time being, Majima tries to find out from one of them why they want to take her, although they don't tell him anything useful. Upon finding safety, she breaks down in tears and falls to the ground, holding onto Majima while she does so. In this vulnerable state, Majima pulls out the knife he intended to use to kill her, and briefly reflects upon whether to take her life or not. With Tachibana having been able to slow down the police in their investigation, Kiryu finds himself needing to live an honest life working in real estate until Tachibana can find the owner of the empty lot. So, after Kiryu picks out a new suit with the help of Nishikiyama, he goes to meet with Oda, who is meeting a client of Tachibana Real Estate. They find themselves needing to drive out a Yakuza disguised as a squatter out of what is known as the Sugita building, owned by a man named Yamanoi. Upon going to the Sugita building and being unsuccessful in driving the man out, a group of Yakuza he was working for arrive and demand a large sum of money from Tachibana Real Estate in exchange for getting the man to move out of the building. Kiryu and Oda refuse, and after fighting them, they reveal that the Yakuza they just fought were working for Awano. With their affairs with the squatter completed, Oda tasks Kiryu with informing Yamanoi of their success in clearing out the building for him, and for the two to later meet in a bar named Serena afterwards. During this detour, Kiryu finds Yamanoi injured and takes him back to the Sugita building. This is where we're introduced to Real Estate Royale, another avenue for earning large sums of money for Kiryu respectively. Unlike Mr. Shakedown, who exclusively acts as an avenue for money, these side stories and mini-games concerning Real Estate Royale also serve as a way for Kiryu to remove the locks on the skill wheels for his combat styles. Engaging with Real Estate Royale sees you needing to buy shares of real estate within an area by buying them out. Then you begin collections on that area and earn money. Afterwards, you can reinvest that money into upgrading the properties' ranks for a higher share of the area and also buying more properties. Real Estate Royale can be quite the grind, as it does take quite some time before you begin earning a sizable profit from it. However, combined with other avenues for money like fighting Mr. Shakedown, you'll eventually find yourself not needing to worry about money in this game again if you engage with it enough. While waiting for collections on your properties to come in, fighting Mr. Shakedown is the best course of action, as you can use the money attained from him to buy more properties while still having disposable sums of money to yourself. The best method I found for beating Mr. Shakedown easily is getting the slime gun as Majima, as specifically during his part you'll find the Dragon and Tiger weapons shop, which is how you can obtain it. When doing so, you'll find the Kamurocho branch as Kiryu, which you can then use to buy weapons that you unlocked as Majima. Upon doing so, you can gain access to the slime gun and use it to shoot Mr. Shakedown multiple times, hence taking him down more easily. Upon going to Serena, Kiryu finds that Oda is yet to arrive, but he finds Nishikiyama instead. He also meets Reina for the first time here, as this is a bar that Nishikiyama frequents. The two enjoy some time together with Reina, and after a while, an injured Oda eventually arrives and collapses on the floor. Behind him, Awano and the Taihei Association, the Yakuza branch that he operates, enters the bar. Kiryu is forced to fight them outside, and after doing so, Awano meets him once more. He tells him to give up Tachibana, as if he doesn't, then he'll make sure everyone in the Dojima family begins to hunt him down. Kiryu refuses and returns to the bar. In the bar, Oda calls Tachibana and gives him the illusion that Kiryu can't be trusted anymore, and instructs him to hide. Kiryu decides to return his focus to trying to get Kuzi to give him the real killer who framed him for the murder in the empty lot, hence he decides to go there to properly inspect it for himself. There, Tachibana finds Kiryu and tells him that Kuzi isn't the one who organized Kiryu's framing for the murder, and that it must have been someone else. In addition, Tachibana mentions that he's located the owner of the empty lot but has yet to make contact. If Tachibana can acquire the empty lot, then he can hold power over the Dojima family. He asks Kiryu to stay alive until then, and that he'll make contact with him once more the next day. Hence, Kiryu decides to return home for the night. During the night, the Dojima family lieutenants begin their hunt for Kiryu. Yakuza 0 houses my favorite rendition of the combat scene in this series. It sees you being able to make use of 4 styles each for Kiryu and Majima, 3 of which you unlock early into the main story with restrictions in place that can be removed via Real Estate Royale for Kiryu respectively. The 4th, the Legend style, which eventually becomes known as the Dragon of Dojima style, is unlocked after completing the story concerning Real Estate Royale. To remove the locks for that style, you need to earn completion points by doing side content. The styles in this game generally serve different purposes depending on the situation at hand. For example, for Kiryu, the Brawler style is multi-purpose, being used for crowd control or for fighting one person only. It's the style you're likely to make the most use of because of that. The Rush style is ideal for fighting one person and favors speed over strength. Beast style is ideal for crowd control and favors strength over speed. Lastly, the Legend style is the combat you're likely familiar with from previous entries in the series. While these styles are ideal for their own purposes, how you use them is up to you, and it isn't obligatory to use them for their respective purposes. You can experiment to see which suits you best, and use them in direct succession to one another for combos too. This game generally offers a lot of variety in its combat, and it makes the combat more fun to experiment with and use within the game. The next day, Kiryu finds himself in a confrontation with the Dojima family that spans throughout Kamurocho. He's eventually led into the sewers as a result of not having any other options but to trust a random person who offers to let them use the sewers to escape, although the woman was secretly working for Kuze, who ambushes Kiryu in the sewers. Kuze is someone who generally doesn't really care much for trying to reach the top of the Dojima family and is more interested in living in the present. Glory, status, or living a lavish lifestyle doesn't interest him, and that aspect of his character makes him the lieutenant that Kiryu will find himself aligning his views with the most as the series proceeds and he gets older. The Yakuza is a lifestyle that outwardly presents a lavish lifestyle, but in reality it's a difficult and dirty way of life, and while the other lieutenants either represent the outward perspective or the reality of being the Yakuza, Kuze represents both. The scene where he ambushes Kiryu does a really good job at showing that symbolism visually, with Kuze wearing flashy and bright clothes that are tainted with the dirty sewer water. Either way, after a boss fight with Kuze, Kiryu finds Awano at the exit. While Kuze represents both sides of being a Yakuza, Awano represents the outward, lavish lifestyle. He's someone who doesn't concern himself with honor or the inner workings of the profession that he's given his life to serve, and would rather focus on living lavishly instead. Hence he focuses on extortion and trying to use the outward bravado of his role to get Kiryu to give up Tachibana, while Kuze is someone who's more likely to use his fists to try and beat Kiryu into doing so. Either way, Awano tries and fails to get Kiryu to give up Tachibana and threatens him with the orphanage he grew up with, the well-being of Nishikiyama and the men currently waiting outside to shoot Kiryu the moment he leaves the sewer. Regardless, Kiryu refuses all the same, and just as he prepares to fight everyone Awano mentioned, he finds no one there, which is another way to show how Awano's focus is on the outward lifestyle of a Yakuza rather than the inner workings, as it shows how he focuses on using his role to extort people into giving him what he wants rather than actually following through with anything. Nishikiyama finds Kiryu and the two drive out of Kamurocho. There, Nishikiyama tries to kill Kiryu but ultimately finds himself being unable to pull the trigger. Since Nishikiyama died in the first game of the series, he never got to see how deep their connection went, and this game does a good job of showing that. Yakuza 0 also does a good job of showing what kind of person Nishikiyama was before the first game. A lot of the scenes between these two focus on dramatic irony, as the player, specifically those who have played the games leading up to this one, know what kind of person Nishikiyama becomes, and a lot of what he says during this emotional breakdown holds true. Kiryu and Nishikiyama both say that they're nothing without one another, and based on the dark path the latter goes down when Kiryu is in prison, that holds true. He isn't interested in climbing the ranks of a Tojo clan without Kiryu in it, which is a contradiction to the person we see in the first Yakuza game. I think that this also shows how bad Kiryu inadvertently doomed Nishikiyama when he decided to put himself in prison rather than Nishikiyama in the first game, forcing his brother to his own devices with no one to confide in, which combined with a lot of other factors such as Kazuma's favoritism towards Kiryu, resulted in Nishikiyama losing his morals and doing whatever means necessary to reach the top. Ultimately, this scene ends with Kiryu cutting ties with Nishikiyama to save him from becoming a target in the Dojima family due to their association with one another, before going back to Kamurocho. Back with Majima, he hides Makoto inside of a storage room. The two talk amongst themselves, and Makoto mentions that she doesn't know why the Yakuza want her. Majima also tries to find out why Makoto's been looking for a man with a tattoo of a bat. Makoto asks him to speak with Lee regarding information on the matter, hence he goes to find Lee. He eventually finds him at a mahjong parlor, which is also an underground hospital. There, Lee talks about Makoto and that her blindness is psychologically induced due to trauma that she's experienced. When she first came to Sotenbori 2 years prior, she came to the area alone, and while we'll eventually find out why she did this, for now, the only relevant thing to know is that someone with a tattoo of a bat had sold her for money to the Korean mafia, where she was locked in a cage and was faced with unspeakable acts against her, which resulted in her being diagnosed with post-traumatic psychogenic blindness. Now knowing that the man with the tattoo of a bat isn't relevant to what the Yakuza are looking for Makoto, Majima tries to leave, seemingly accepting that with his inability to kill Makoto, Sagawa will come and kill Majima, then simply hire someone else to kill her. He suggests that it isn't impossible for him to escape Sagawa's grasp. He mentions having some sort of plan to stop them from seeking out Makoto, but tells Majima that he'll need some time to prepare. Hence, Majima isn't able to do much but check on Makoto. Upon returning to Makoto, she begins crying. Majima tries to comfort her by finding common ground in the fact that they've been through similar things, with Majima revealing that he only has a single eye. His efforts to comfort her ultimately don't work, but eventually he does manage to calm her down by offering to buy her food. Upon buying her takoyaki, the two talk amongst themselves. Makoto mentions a watch she has, and despite not being able to use it, she keeps it regardless as it brings her comfort. She eventually becomes flustered at explaining this and abandons it, although Majima picks it up and keeps it on his person for the time being. Majima eventually decides to leave for work. During his journey to the Grand, the owner of a cabaret club invites Majima to spend some time inside, and this is where we're introduced to Majima's money-making scheme in the game. Both Kiryu and Majima are able to interact with their own renditions of Mr. Shakedown, and while Kiryu has Real Estate Royale to complement that, Majima has the cabaret club Czar. This centers around Majima managing a cabaret club, and it also has its own mini-game. During it, you need to manage customers by appointing them girls that are to their liking and occasionally helping by responding to the girls' hand signals, which improves the customer's mood as a result. The ultimate goal is to ensure that every customer leaves satisfied and spreads the word of the club, which increases its fans via word of mouth while earning as much profit as possible. One of the best ways to do this during the minigame is by reaching fever time, which improves the mood of every customer and causes them to spend more money. Fever time can be maintained as long as one customer is in that respective mood, which can be done by extending sessions whenever prompted or by simply reactivating fever time whenever possible. With that in mind, it's worth noting that you should only use fever time when the right opportunity to do so strikes, namely when there are the most customers in at the same time to maximize profits, as using it when there are fewer people inside the club could result in less profit being made, which could then be seen as a wasted opportunity. In addition, it's also important to keep recruiting girls into your roster by doing various things like doing side content and engaging in the cabaret club Czar's side story, which rewards you with additions to your roster as you proceed. This side hustle is what removes the locks on the skill wheels for Majima, and completing its side story results in you being able to unlock the legend style for Majima. At the Grand, Majima meets one of the doctors from the underground hospital who brings a message from Lee, instructing him to leave work and go home. Upon trying to do so, Majima is ambushed outside of the club by the Yakuza who tried to take Makoto the night prior. Hence he fights them off, and when he takes them all down, Sagawa coincidentally meets him. Majima lies to him and mentions that he's still searching for Makoto Makimura and leaves. Majima meets with Lee, who asks him to use a secret passage in the massage parlor to stop anyone from watching Majima, as Sagawa's men have been keeping a close watch on him. Hence he does so and eventually meets Lee in the storage room for Makoto. He gives Makoto a drink to temporarily drug her, and with her unconscious, he tells Majima about his plan to kill a body double he found for Makoto, resulting in them believing that she's dead. Majima, at the prospect of having to kill a random civilian, refuses to accompany Lee in following through with this plan. Lee is insistent on following through with it because he views Makoto as a daughter. He was once a hitman who, during a job, had set Makoto and the other girls she was trapped with free, but due to her blindness, she couldn't move for herself, which resulted in Lee taking her in. All the same, Majima refuses, which causes the two to fight, since Lee doesn't want anyone knowing about his plan if they aren't going to help. This initiates a boss fight, and after taking him down, Majima declares that he'll take down anyone who comes for him as a result of his failure to kill Makoto. Hence he takes the objects that Lee had made in preparation for his plan and throws it away in a rubbish bin outside, subsequently going home afterwards. Majima's combat, much like Kiryu's, is broken down into 4 styles. We unlock 3 during the main story and a 4th for the cabaret club Czar. The thug style is the best for being multi-purpose, as typically you can use it for both fighting multiple people or fighting one person. The breaker style is best used for crowd control, since you can use it to attack multiple enemies at once. The slugger style is best for fighting one enemy at a time. It gives Majima the most immunity to attacks while he's performing moves of his own, which means that while he moves slower, he also hits harder. The legend style sees Majima making use of his knife and best resembles the fighting style we're familiar with from the other games. The best tactic I personally use for any situation when playing as Majima is to use the breaker style. It takes some time for Majima to wind up the main attacks, and he can easily be stopped at any time if someone attacked him whilst using it, but it also deals a large sum of damage if you know how to use it correctly, regardless of whether you're fighting one enemy or multiple. The next day, Majima gets a message from Lee to meet at the massage parlor, and upon doing so, he finds that the girl Lee intended to kill has been found dead. Thinking that Majima had killed the girl on his own, Lee invited him, but Majima mentions that he didn't kill her. Lee then gets a phone call from someone asking to speak with Majima, who also knew about the plan, supposedly because they picked it up from the bin that Majima had thrown it into the night prior. Regardless, the person asks to meet Majima at the Grand. Majima goes to meet a man who introduces himself as Nishitani of the Omi Alliance and the boss of the Yakuza who've been trying to capture Makoto. He is also who killed the body double in order to throw Sagawa off and make him think that Makoto is dead. The reality is that Nishitani doesn't actually want to kill her, as unlike Sagawa who wants her dead, Nishitani was ordered to capture her alive. Nishitani then proposes a fight with Majima, and after some initial resistance, Majima ends up honoring that wish. Throughout the series, we've known Majima to act insane and hide away the more serious and sentimental parts of his character behind that facade, only bringing it out when a situation calls for it. This is an aspect of his character that he appears to inherit from Nishitani, who acts the same way in this game. Nishitani is the type of person to play along with Majima's policies and principles principles while still finding ways around them to get what he wants, as seen through him calling the police on himself as a way around Majima's policies against attacking people in his club. This strangely specific part of his character is also something that Majima inherits too, which likely explains why we see him so respectful of Kiryu's policy to not fight Majima unless there's a reason to in Yakuza Kiwami. Either way, Nishitani decides not to tell Majima the reason that he wants Makoto or the person giving the order and leaves with the police instead. Majima returns to his office for the time being, where he meets Sagawa, who saw the commotion. He appears to believe that Majima killed Makoto Makimura and goes to call Shimano to let Majima back into the family. Majima decides to go back to Makoto and speak with Lee. On his way there, he runs into the doctor from the underground hospital disguised as a mahjong parlor who mentions that Lee needs medication to prevent feeling the pain of the gunshot wound. Majima offers to deliver it for him, unbeknownst to the fact that this was a decoy for them to follow Majima to the place Makoto is being kept. There, Majima gives an update on what's been going on, and the three make a plan for Lee and Makoto to leave Sotenbori and hide elsewhere while Majima stays to figure out a way to get them to stop hunting her. Before they can leave, the doctor bursts through the doors, revealing that he'd been following Majima and revealed the location of Makoto's hiding spot to Sagawa's men. They attack and wound the doctor, and after Majima fights them off, he's tasked with taking Makoto back to the massage parlor, as Lee decides to bring the doctor to a hospital regardless of his betrayal. Upon getting there, the two of them meet Lee once more, who goes to start a van they'd be planning to use to leave Sotenbori. Although, as Lee starts the van, it implodes with him inside, seemingly killing him immediately. Makoto is knocked unconscious while Majima remains awake to see Sagawa, who appears to have deduced that Majima lied about killing Makoto. Just as Sagawa is about to kill Makoto and Majima, Masaru Sera emerges and temporarily immobilizes Sagawa. He takes Makoto and knocks Majima unconscious. Back with Kiryu, he finds that the Dojima family have set fire to his apartment to try and draw him out further. Hence he goes back to Kamurocho to find a place to hide. He only gets attacked by a drunk person, and if he were to defend himself, it would attract unnecessary attention, so he walks away instead. He's later approached by Reina, who tells him to go to Sarana to hide there for the night. The Dojima family eventually find him in there, since they had been watching Sarana from afar. Kiryu fights them off, and before going elsewhere, he asks Reina to give the watch Tachibana had given him to Nishikiyama. Outside the bar, Kiryu fights more of the Dojima family. This eventually escalates into another fight with Kuze, and after the boss fight, Kiryu is attacked from behind. Before Kuze lands another hit, Tachibana drives into the situation. Kiryu gets into the car and they both drive away. This is a moment where Kiryu and Tachibana share a moment of sentimentality with one another. Kiryu has been trying to push people like Nishikiyama, Reina, and others who are dear to him away in an attempt to protect them, as simply being associated with him is bringing them trouble. I do think that this is a moment where Kiryu is expressing a sense of guilt for them being so involved in a situation. Regardless, their discussion ends because just as Oda arrives, Tachibana passes out. Kiryu and Oda bring Tachibana to Little Asia, one of the few places in Kamurocho where the Dojima family lack control. Oda explains that when Tachibana lost his hand, he lost too much blood, and as a result, his kidney stopped working. Due to this, he needs dialysis every other day. One of the residents of Little Asia arrive and mention that the Elder Chen wants to speak to Oda regarding Kiryu's presence in the area. Hence, the two of them leave to go to a nearby restaurant, with the game indicating that a man with a tattoo of a bat may be closer than expected. At the restaurant, the Elder Chen refuses to house Kiryu in Little Asia. Not only is this because of the fact that he's being hunted by the Dojima family and the place which could bring them disaster, but also because of the history between themselves and Kazuma. This game and a lot of other early Yakuza games present Kazuma as an all-knowing, brilliant tactician, and it's very rare to see an ally to Kiryu's situations talk badly of him, since many of the other characters that ally with Kiryu are also familiar and closely acquainted with Kazuma. I think that the Elder Chen speaking about the incident with Kazuma and Shimano driving the Chinese living in Kamurocho underground does a good job at lightly tapping the rose-tinted glasses that many of the characters view Kazuma in to show that in reality he isn't exactly the best father figure, as regardless of the fact that Kiryu looks up to him, Kazuma is the cause for a lot of later events in the series. For example, his blatant favoritism towards Kiryu in later games such as Yakuza 1 is one of the many reasons that Nishikiyama ends up envying him and going down the dark path he does in that game. There are a lot of examples like this, but because these games are in the perspective of Kiryu who looks up to Kazuma, we as the audience are inclined to not dwell on it too much akin to Kiryu. One of the best ways that the games show this is Kiryu's own tendency to speak highly of Kazuma but then falls silent or ceases to attempt to defend him when people bring up the things that Kazuma has done, namely murdering people as a Tojo hitman, which is how he attained the reputation and status within the Tojo clan among many other things. With this in mind, I think that the game does a decent job at showing the other, reality-driven perspectives that others view Kazuma in rather than the rose-tinted ones that Kiryu has of him. Either way, Tachibana awakes and stops Oda's negotiations with the Elder Chen. Outside, he recommends that Kiryu spends the night at West Park with the homeless. He also has has some preparations to make for the next day, and with that, Tachibana leaves, promising to pick Kiryu up the next day. So he goes to West Park and spends the night there with one of the homeless people who gave him information about Tachibana real estate earlier in the game. The next day, Oda comes for Kiryu and the two ride off to the Tojo clan headquarters, where Tachibana is currently negotiating with the second acting chairman of the Tojo clan to get the Dojima family to stop hunting Kiryu down. He mentions that if Dojima were to secure the empty lot, he'd gain a massive influx of power and influence which will inevitably make him the third chairman of the Tojo clan. Many within seek to prevent this, including Kazuma, as they fear what someone like Dojima would do with that level of power with no one to keep him in check. Ultimately, Tachibana ends up paying over 1 billion yen to the Tojo clan in exchange for them to order the Dojima family to stop hunting Kiryu down. Mihara, the acting chairman of the Tojo clan, puts a call into Dojima to instruct him to leave Kiryu be. While the matter of business is resolved, there is still protocol. According to Mihara, Kazuma in his earlier years was worth 1 billion yen, and to test whether this applies to Kiryu as well, he's tasked with a long fight throughout the Tojo clan to leave or die trying. After fighting through them, Mihara watches as Kiryu, Tachibana and Oda leave. Meanwhile, at the Dojima family headquarters, Dojima learns of the recent order from the Tojo clan. Shibusawa appears to have foreseen this, and also how Tachibana plans to use Kiryu next. With that, Dojima gives him control over the situation and Shibusawa vows to obtain the empty lot. Back with Kiryu, Tachibana gives an update on the empty lot and that the owner has been located in Sotenbori. However, Tachibana is hesitant to try and get a hold of them since another faction is in pursuit of them, likely because someone from the Shibusawa family is aware of who the owner is and where to locate them. In addition, it appears that someone from the Omi alliance is trying to obtain the empty lot as well, and due to that, Sotenbori is also a dangerous place for Tachibana real estate. Ultimately, Kiryu convinces Tachibana to let him go to Sotenbori to retrieve the owner of the empty lot, and Oda offers to go with him. After briefly preparing, Kiryu goes to meet Tachibana in Little Asia. There, Kiryu is told that the meaning of the empty lot to Tachibana will be shared with him if he returns safely from Sotenbori. In addition, it's here that the owner of the empty lot is finally revealed to be Makoto Makimura. We then return to the perspective of Majima, who's being beaten by Sagawa, who then threatens to kill him. He then frees Majima and declares that the two of them are going to work together to find Masaru Sera since he currently has Makoto. It's worth noting that while we know who Sera is from the first Yakuza game, Majima and Sagawa don't at this current moment in time. Majima also learns that the order to kill Makoto came directly from Shimano. With no leads on why everyone wants to kill Makoto or where she is, Majima finds himself approaching a man named Billiken, who is a corrupt police detective willing to put Majima in prison with Nishitani in exchange for him fighting inside the Colosseum. After doing so, Billiken places Majima in a cell with Nishitani. After a boss fight, Nishitani reveals that Makoto is with a third party by the name of the Nikkyo Consortium. The Nikkyo Consortium is an underground operation working on behalf of the Tojo clan that's run by Masaru Sera, and Makoto is with them. We also learn that 3 subsidiaries of the Tojo clan are after Makoto, and for conflicting reasons. Shimano seemingly wants her dead, Sera wants to protect her, and Shibusawa wants her captured alive, which is why he hired Nishitani. Majima doesn't want anything more than to do whatever possible to let Makoto live a real life, since he feels a sense of responsibility as a failed hitman to ensure that she gets to live a real life away from the underworld. Nishitani gives the location of the Nikkyo Consortium and offers to go with Majima to get her back, not because of an ulterior motive, but simply because he wants to fight by his side. Although, just as they're about to leave, gunshots ring out. Billiken stumbles into view and then collapses with a gunshot wound. One of the police officers arrive and shoot Nishitani due to him being hired to do so by Shibusawa. Nishitani tells Majima to get out of there so that he can go and retrieve Makoto. Meanwhile, Nishitani remains to die whilst trying to take down the officer that killed Billiken. Majima returns to Sotenbori and finds Sagawa waiting for him. There he tells Sagawa where Makoto and the Nikkyo Consortium is. Hence they set off to go there, and upon arrival, Majima and Sagawa split up to find Makoto faster. This initiates a long fight, and after completing it, he finds Sera waiting for him. After a boss fight, Sera reveals that 2 people from Tachibana real estate currently have Makoto and tries to convince Majima not to go to Kamurocho, since Sagawa will undoubtedly be following and he will try to kill Makoto by any means necessary. Majima initially agrees to remain in Sotenbori, but this plan quickly changes when Sagawa shoots Sera and takes the business card of the real estate business who has her, and it's revealed that Kiryu is the one who has Makoto. 8 hours before Majima and Sagawa stormed the consortium, Kiryu and Oda were in Sotenbori to collect Makoto from Sera. This portion of the game is largely dedicated to revealing more about Oda and Tachibana and how the two were previously part of a small mafia in Sotenbori consisting of 4 to 5 people. Oda was previously their leader, but Tachibana arrived and beat him and his men. Oda admired him and begged him to be their leader, which resulted in him getting the same tattoo as them. We also learn about Tachibana specifically and how he is half Chinese and half Japanese, which may be of importance later. Shortly afterwards, the call from Sera arrives and Kiryu and Oda go to the Nikkyo Consortium. With Makoto, Kiryu and Oda leave Sotenbori via a taxi, although not before Makoto and Oda seemingly recognize each other. There isn't much time to dwell on this as Shibusawa and his men begin attacking. killing, hence it's up to Kiryu to fend them off. This sees a minigame commence where you're required to shoot the Shibusawa family and stop them from attacking you or the car. If you lose all your health, then you'll die, and if your car loses all its health, then it'll implode with everyone in it. After fending all of them off and getting away, they decide to seek refuge in an empty construction building. Oda appears to try and take a breather elsewhere, and with him seemingly gone, Makoto tries to tell Kiryu about her past with Oda, although he later appears to try and kill them both as he mentions that he can't let Makoto and Tachibana meet. Alas, Makoto immobilizes him and Kiryu gets Oda to give them his reasoning for turning traitor. Oda reveals that he has a tattoo of a bat, and 2 years prior, Oda had abducted Makoto and sold her. Oda explains that Makoto is Tachibana's younger sister, and because he didn't know about this until after he had sold her, he decided that should a situation ever arise where the two would meet, he would kill her. This was a convenient way of doing it since Tachibana wouldn't disbelieve that Shibusawa or the Omi Alliance had killed her. Shibusawa's men then arrive and Oda decides to try and stay where he is and hold them off as best he can since he can't walk and would slow Kiryu and Makoto down. Hence the two of them leave, and this begins another section where you need to protect Makoto as Kiryu. It can be more difficult to protect Makoto as Kiryu since unlike Majima's breaker style, his beast style doesn't have as much range. Regardless, it's still possible, and when Makoto and Kiryu leave, the game cuts to Oda. It's revealed that he'd been leaking information to Shibusawa, who proceeds to kill him. Back with Kiryu, Makoto explains that the entire reason she had been in Sotenbori was so that she could find Tachibana, as the two had grown up in China but were split apart when Tachibana decided to leave for Osaka. Makoto then begins to talk about how her life has been a train wreck, and that despite everything she's been through, all she wants to do is see Tachibana again. With that, Kiryu promises to ensure that the siblings are reunited. The next day, Kiryu takes her to West Park in Kamurocho and asks the homeless to keep her safe while he goes to investigate why he can't get in touch with Tachibana. In Little Asia, he finds that Tachibana has been unconscious and that he only just now woke up. Kiryu then informs Tachibana of everything that happened while they were in Sotenbori. It's here that Tachibana reveals the reason he and Kazuma allied to obtain the empty lot, as the alliance was one of mutual benefit. Kazuma feared how bad the Tojo clan would fall if Dojima succeeded in the Kamurocho revitalization project, and Tachibana simply wanted to find his sister. The way for both of these goals to be achieved is if Tachibana Real Estate acquired the empty lot. Tachibana then begins to break down in tears at his regret for not being able to help his mother and sister when he abandoned them in China to come to Japan. He too just wants to see his sister. Shortly after this, the Dojima family arrived, seemingly because Shibusawa had known where Tachibana was seeking refuge the entire time due to Oda leaking such information, and chose this moment to attack and capture him by force. Shortly after taking them down, Kiryu and Tachibana try to leave, although they're ambushed by a man considered to be the best hitman in Asia, Lao Gui. Tachibana speculates that Dojima hired him to perform the killing in the empty lot and frame Kiryu, although that is disregarded for now since Kiryu was shot twice, and with no other options, Tachibana gives himself up to Lao Gui, who is there on behalf of the Dojima family. Kiryu tries to go after Tachibana, but due to the pain of having been shot twice, he collapses and loses consciousness. He later awakes to the Elder Chen, who had his injuries treated. The Elder Chen mentions that he has men looking for where Tachibana was taken, but it will take some time. For now, Kiryu goes back to West Park to watch over Makoto. Outside of Little Asia, Kiryu is ambushed by Dojima family thugs who have Nishikiyama accompanying them, who tells Kiryu that regardless of whether aiding him will bring trouble, he's choosing to do so regardless. Finally, Kiryu decides to accept Nishikiyama's help instead of pushing it away, and after the two fight off the Dojima family, they go to West Park. Upon arrival, Kiryu updates Nishikiyama and Makoto on the things that have happened. Shortly afterwards, Kiryu is called by the Elder Chen. Kiryu is given Tachibana's location, so he and Nishikiyama go there immediately. Meanwhile, Tachibana is being brutally tortured by Kuze and his men for where Makoto is being kept. One of them gets extremely angry with Tachibana, taunting them and whacks him across the head with a sledgehammer, which puts Tachibana on the brink of death. Just then, Kiryu bursts through the door and seeing the state that Tachibana is in, immediately attacks Kuze. After the boss fight, he holds Tachibana in his arms and knowing that he doesn't have much time left, tries to get Nishikiyama to bring Makoto to them instead. In his injured state, Tachibana reveals that Lao Gui is being controlled by Dojima, who's been the one behind everything currently ongoing in the game in hopes to drive out Kazuma, hence the reason for framing Kiryu for the empty lot killing. With that, Tachibana draws his last breath and dies. Kuze also reveals that someone inside of the Tojo clan is trying to sell the empty lot to the Omi Alliance, who aims to take over the Kamurocho revitalization project and declare war on the Tojo clan. Kiryu doesn't care for this and leaves. Outside, Nishikiyama arrives with Makoto, who touches Tachibana's lifeless body. Knowing that the brother she had been trying to find for so long is now dead, all she can do is weep over his dead body. There, she explains that while there's light coming into her eyes, she can't see anything clearly. She also wants revenge on Dojima and his lieutenants for killing Tachibana and asks Majima to kill them. He tries to encourage her not to go through with this, as it isn't in her nature to kill others. Makoto tries to leave but falls to the ground. Majima holds her and the two decide to get takoyaki and talk. During this, Majima tries to get more information on how Makoto intends to enact revenge, but her response to his questioning is cryptic. She mentions that she wants another box of takoyaki and Majima offers to go and get it for her, her, although upon his return he finds that she's missing and left a message for him via a nearby homeless man. She wants to meet Majima the next day on the roof above the empty lot. He goes there the next day, but finds the only people waiting for him is the Shibusawa family. After fighting them off, he gets them to tell him where Makoto is, and he learns that she voluntarily went to Dojima himself to negotiate a price for the empty lot. Majima begins to make his way there. Meanwhile, Makoto is specifying the conditions for the empty lot, that she simply wants the lieutenants dead in exchange for the lot. Dojima declines this and mentions that the reason they've been trying to buy the empty lot is because if Makoto were to make a claim on the land after the project was completed, it would cause the entire Kamurocho revitalization project to collapse. However, if they killed her, then she's unable to make a claim on the empty lot and the project could move ahead. Hence, Lao Gui is ordered to shoot Makoto, and this is the scene that Majima arrives to see. After fighting through more of the Dojima family's men, he finds that Makoto is still alive. Sera also arrives with his men, and together, the Nikkyo Consortium and Majima bring her to a hospital. Sera tells Majima that Makoto, himself, and the doctor are going to be moved somewhere hidden where the Dojima family can't get to her, as if they learn that she's alive, they'll likely try to kill her. Majima decides not to accompany them, as he believes that Makoto will always be a target if Dojima is still looking for her. Hence, he intends to storm the Dojima family headquarters just to try and take his life. Meanwhile, at the Dojima family, Shibusawa is named the new captain, and he immediately begins targeting Kazuma and anyone with ties to him. The game then cuts to Kiryu's perspective, who gets a call from Sera and is asked to meet in Little Asia. There, Kiryu is informed of Shibusawa and what he intends to do with those associated with Kazuma. With that in mind, he is advised to leave Kamurocho and stay out of trouble, since they'll undoubtedly come for him. In addition, he still hasn't been declared innocent for the empty lot killing. If Makoto wakes up, the Nikkyo Consortium intends to take the empty lot, which has always been the plan even when Tachibana was trying to obtain it for himself. This is because Kazuma's aim throughout this entire ordeal had been to stop Dojima from growing more powerful, and with the empty lot in the hands of the consortium, Sera would be established as the Tojo clan's successor as opposed to Dojima. Sera promises to find a way to clear Kiryu's name of the murder charge, and tells Kiryu that Makoto is being kept on a boat to hide from the Dojima family. Kiryu decides to meet with Nishikiyama for the time being and goes to West Park. At West Park, Kiryu and Nishikiyama feel the impact of Shibusawa's order to take out anyone associated with Kazuma. The two plan to hold out for as long as possible in hopes that Makoto will awake and give the empty lot to the Nikkyo Consortium. Hence, Nishikiyama goes to the Kazuma family office to warn Kashiwagi while Kiryu fights off the Dojima family. After taking them down, Kiryu goes there too, but all he finds waiting for him is Kuze. The two decide to fight one last time, hence beginning a boss fight. Afterwards, Kuze reveals that Shibusawa knew that Makoto was alive the entire time, since he ordered Lao Gui to shoot her but not kill her, so that he can watch Sera take her to his hideout. From there, Shibusawa could attack and kill everyone in the Nikkyo Consortium. With that, Kiryu and Nishikiyama prepare to go to the Shibara Wharf, the boat that Makoto is currently being held in. At the same time, Majima is currently preparing to storm the Dojima family office. This section is your last chance to do any remaining side content prior to the end of the main story. However, it doesn't mean that you'll be locked out of them forever, since you can go back and do them via Premium Adventure should you please. Unlike Yakuza 5 and some other Yakuza games, you can transfer your save data from Premium Adventure into New Game Plus, which is helpful for saving time if you want to do another playthrough that focuses solely on the gameplay without any of the grinding. Grinding is simply a part of the journey when playing through these games, and due to that, it's important to simply just have fun doing it rather than viewing it as a chore. I think that Yakuza games tend to walk a very fine line between having grinding be a boring necessity that needs to be done in order to have an easier time with the main story, and making them a genuine fun experience for you to get lost in. Over the years, I've come to accept grinding as simply being a part of these games and to just have fun doing them, even if it means sometimes having to turn off my brain for a bit while I do it. I've had a fun experience with grinding the skill wheel in this game, but I personally chose not to do Mahjong or anything akin to it since I don't know how to play that. To an extent, I've never had much of an issue with grinding in these games. I think that there are times where they become a bore, but other than that, I tend to have a decent time with doing it. Other than that, you can do various pieces of side content such as sub-stories, which don't necessarily reward you in the same way as other games do. This is because money is your form of experience points in this game, which many sub-stories don't reward you with. However, sub-stories do give you things like the Trouble Finder, which is helpful for finding Mr. Shakedown among other things. On his way to the Dojima family, Majima beats up the people who previously attacked him before. Afterwards, Sagawa arrives and Majima finally stands up to him, declaring that he'll be there if anyone makes another attack on Makoto. At the Dojima family headquarters, Majima begins taking everyone down in order to get to Sohei. Meanwhile, at the Shibara Wharf, the Shibusawa family begin attacking the Nikkyo Consortium. Although initially outnumbered, Kashiwagi arrives with the Kazuma family, and with them to fight back against the Shibusawa family outside the boat, Kiryu and Nishikiyama begin going to Shibusawa, who's already inside. Hence, this begins a long fight, and during it, Kiryu and Nishikiyama are separated as the former goes to Shibusawa, while the latter remains below to fight off more of the Shibusawa family. Upon completing it, Kiryu reaches Shibusawa and the two have a standoff. Meanwhile, Majima has been beating down everyone in the Dojima family office, hence beginning a long fight. After completing it, Majima encounters Awano and the two briefly speak before beginning a boss fight. After completing it, Majima briefly reflects on the people he's met throughout this ordeal and what he's learnt from their lifestyle. They lived by what Majima deemed an illogical and idiotic lifestyle, but that was what made them some of the finest people he knew. It's often interpreted that Majima's mad dog personality is something that he puts on to hide his vulnerabilities, and this game does a good job of establishing that notion. Majima is nothing like his future renditions in this game, and I think that Yakuza games can do a good job of presenting Majima in a more serious tone that isn't over the top all the time. And I wish that this aspect of him is one that we saw more often when the situation calls for it, such as during the Majima saga in Yakuza Kiwami 2. Just then, Lao Gui arrives and kills Awano. Dojima makes a brief appearance and orders Lao Gui to kill Majima before walking away. This begins another boss fight against Lao Gui, which is the true final boss for Majima. After beating him, Majima punches him through the door to Dojima's office and begins beating him more. Dojima tries to shoot him, but Sera intervenes. The game cuts back to the perspective of Kiryu, which Shibusawa reveals that the only thing he's been seeking is the triumph of surpassing Kazuma and establishing his legacy. Shibusawa, in my opinion, represents the inner workings of being a Yakuza, and the difficulties of trying to survive in an environment where making it to the top is of the utmost importance. Shibusawa is aware of the fact that he can't surpass Kazuma, and instead of trying to garner the skills to do so, he aims to write his own title and wear that instead. The pressure to reach the top has led Shibusawa to just try and redefine what that is to his liking, rather than genuinely trying to surpass those who are already there. Kiryu's last boss fight is against Shibusawa. After completing it, Shibusawa vows that he'll kill everyone. This only angers Kiryu, who begins attacking Shibusawa more, but before landing the final hit, he's stopped by Nishikiyama. Nishikiyama mentions that if Kiryu were to cross the line of killing someone, he can never go back. If the day were to ever come where he would need to kill, then Nishikiyama vows to be there with him. With Majima, he vows to kill Lao Gui and Dojima, although Sera convinces him not to. He mentions that if Majima were to kill someone on Makoto's behalf, she'd be saddled with the guilt of her hands being clean only because Majima's are soaked in blood. There isn't a way to repay someone for killing on your behalf, and with knowledge of that, Sera questions Majima on whether he'd want to saddle Makoto with a debt that she can't repay. Sera also reveals that Makoto has awoken and sold the empty lot to Sera, who intends to use it to fight back against Dojima and his efforts to drive out Kazuma. Majima prepares to leave, but before he does so, Sera asks him to bring a message to Shimano, instructing him to take responsibility for betraying the Tojo clan. At the Shimano family office, Majima passes the message to Shimano, who shoots the leader of the Omi Alliance and with no one to declare otherwise, says that he has nothing to do with the empty lot. He also vows that the Shimano family will be the one to surpass the Dojima family, as Majima is now back in the clan and working for Shimano. 1 month later, Sera is appointed as the new captain of the Tojo clan and is appointed to take over the Kamurocho revitalization project. Furthermore, Kiryu has decided to rejoin the Dojima family in an attempt to make things right with them. He no longer wants to pursue Kazuma's way of life, but establish his own style as a Yakuza. Kiryu also says to Nishikiyama that he'll find a way to repay the debts that he owes after all the help Nishikiyama has given him throughout this ordeal, and the two leave Sarana. Meanwhile, Majima is now back in the Tojo clan. Throughout his time in Sotenbori and the manager of the Grand, he'd been used as a pawn for Shimano to take the empty lot. With him no longer being in that position, and through the realization that no one knows what truly defines being right or wrong, he decides that he's going to live his life the way he wants. Just as he begins to walk away, Majima thanks Sagawa for the one thing he learned from him, the importance of being tenacious. With that, he leaves, and when he's out of view, Sagawa is killed. The game doesn't really explain why Sagawa is killed here, but from what I can tell, it's because Sagawa was Shimano's oath brother who killed the head of the Omi Alliance. If the Omi Alliance were to target Shimano, it would lead to an all-out war between the two factions, which would be undesirable for both parties. Hence, since someone needs to be held accountable for what Shimano did, Sagawa is targeted due to him being Shimano's oath brother. The game then cuts to Makoto, who, alongside a friend, is being harassed. She's able to see now due to her blindness being psychologically induced, and through therapy, she was able to regain her sight. Majima then arrives and beats the two men who are harassing her, just as one of them are about to say his name aloud. The game is rather ambiguous with whether Makoto recognizes Majima, since he never speaks, so she can't identify him through the sound of his voice, and one thing that you'll likely pick up on in subsequent playthroughs of this game is that Makoto never learns Majima's name. All she knows about him is that he has one eye. Majima doesn't try to get her to recognize him either, and as seen during his conversation with Sera at the end of the fight with Lao Gui, he believes that the best thing for Makoto is to be away from the underworld. Hence, regardless of whether he loves her or not, he identifies that her doctor is in love with her and encourages him to confess in the hopes that she can live a happy life away from the criminal underworld. With that, Majima walks away. During the end credits, the game reveals what became of various people involved in the story. I won't discuss it since a lot of what is revealed here is seen firsthand in later entries entries within the series. The post-credit scene sees Makoto visiting the grave of Tachibana and reflecting upon what has happened throughout the game and all the people that have helped her. She mentions Majima and how she never learned his name, and with her knowing so little about him, she's unable to thank him for all he did for her. During her reflection, she hears the jingle from her watch that Majima kept when she abandoned it earlier in the game. Likely knowing that she would return here, he placed it into the ground in hopes that he could return the watch to her in a subtle manner. Meanwhile, Majima and Kiryu find each other on the streets of Kamurocho and seemingly meet for the first time. While there are aspects of this game that I actively choose to stay away from whenever I replay it, Yakuza 0 has become one of my favourite games that I've played. I always find myself having a fun experience with it, and I found myself replaying the game quite a few times over the years. I think that the game's story is really well told. The gameplay is also really well executed, and with that in mind, I would recommend playing Yakuza 0. So, there's the video. I hope you all enjoyed it. If you've watched up to this point, then thank you. I am aware that this was quite a lengthy video. It's been quite a rush to try and get this video out on time. I really did try to improve upon things like the audio for this video, and I know it's not perfect, but I am working to improve it further for future videos. If you want to view the list of games I want to make videos about in the future, then you can always do so through the link in the description. Additionally, if you want to follow me, then my socials will be linked in the description, as well as any afterthoughts or messages I may want to add. With that, I haven't really got much else I want to say, so I'll see you all in my next video. I hope you all enjoyed the video, and I wish you all a very pleasant evening.